Hi, Rod Fleming in the Philippines here. How are you all doing? The, the issue of desistance amongst pre-transsexuals transferring into adolescence, and the claim that is often made that most of them will simply desist. Now, it is absolutely the case that a great deal of childhood experimentation with gender is just that. It's just experimentation with gender. As I've explained before, children will try on different roles because by identifying or defining what that different role is, it helps them to define themselves. So if they go, well, I'll try being a girl and see what that's like, and then I'll maybe know what I mean, I don't think of it in this terms, but that's what they're actually doing. It's like define the girl, and you kind of define a negative space, and what is left is me, and I'm the guy, And usually, in situations like that, it always passes. It just moves away, and they go on, and the next thing you know, they've got, can I have a new Tommy gun, please, Mum? I want some new boxing gloves, that sort of thing. They just move on, and that covers a significant number of childhood gender non-conforming behaviours, but most of these are not gender dysphoria, right? They just aren't. And the trouble is that a lot of parents, oh my God, my child is wearing a dress, and it's straight off the clinic, and the clinic goes, oh my God, child with a dress, and they don't treat it with the benign good humour that you should do, and I think which most experienced parents, I have 4 kids, would do. They'd go, yeah, right. We'll see how you feel in 2 years, And that's the right approach, by the way. But there is an issue because some children who are genuinely gender dysphoric do change at puberty. And it's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that many of the studies that are quoted typically by people like Ken Zucker, I mean, they're bunk because they don't make the separation between, he claims they do, but if you read the papers, they don't. They don't make a separation between basically passing gender non-conforming behaviours and actual gender dysphoria. They don't make the critical persistence, insistence and consistence argument such that it's like, it's been going on for years, it never gets any better, it's just getting more so. And it's always the same, it's always the same person, it's not swapping different characters. And these are really indicative that you're looking at a genuinely gender dysphoric pre-transsexual child. So why would they change at puberty? And I was thinking the other night about this, couldn't get sleep, you have to remember that when we're talking about MTF here, right, and we're going to stick with MTF. We're talking about MTF here. These are males, but they have female sexuality, right? So they have many of the characteristics that you would expect a female to have. I mean, they tend to be very agreeable to start with, which is notedly, most the stats say that women tend to be more agreeable than men. They tend to be rather conscientious. These sort of things, so they tend to show character traits that are consistent with girls, around their same age, young women. Now, one of the things that we know is that as girls, typically as they enter puberty, they go through real crises of confidence. It can be very, very difficult phase for girls. And there are a whole list of disorders which occur in adolescence amongst little girls, and you get things like bulimia, anorexia, self-harm. I mean, it's just a list and a list and a list, and sometimes they get, they become sex obsessed, and that's about trying to get affirmation that they're nice girls, that they have excessive, they become sex addicts. And all of these things, these are very unpleasant things, and they happen to girls, and it's really troubling, obviously, for those who are having to deal with them. What I'm trying to say here is that remember that the male to feminine transitioners we're looking at here are likely to have very similar issues. And the main issue, always, forever, with any transsexual, any trans woman, trans man too, but we're talking about the MTF here, is that they live in an interstitial space. Their lives are constantly neither one thing nor the other. They're always like in that space in between, because they're trans, And so where a natal girl, she gets acne, but she's still a girl, right? The trans girl might get the same acne and go, but actually, well, wait a minute, I'll never be attractive as a girl, which is the kind of thing that natal girls will say. And so, they're going to always be girls. But for your pre-transsexual turning into a true transsexual, they might say, what's the point? I'll never be attractive. So why don't I just give up and be a boy? And the fact is that a lot of practitioners have been exploiting this. Now, I don't know if they've been doing it deliberately, but they have been doing it. And that's completely immoral. They should not be doing that. Rather, they should be supporting these people and saying, look, it's always difficult for a girl of your age. You have confidence issues. And these are like 100 times more because of the nature of who you are. You're actually a male. And you're having to surmount difficulties that your natal girl classmates, they don't actually have to surmount. Right? And it's already bad enough for them. They're already showing bulimia and anorexia and having, nervous breakdowns because they just don't think they're pretty enough, and, their teeth are squinting. And, my goodness, I've had a daughter, I know what it's like. And if you're a therapist dealing with young boys like that, you have to take that into account. You have to take into account the fact that you are not dealing with a boy. You're dealing with a girl who happens to be living in a boy or inhabiting a boy's body. And I think that the unbelievable brick-headedness of some therapists in simply not understanding this. I mean, it should be bleeding well obvious. If you've ever met any people who are like on that cusp, they were pre-transsexual, they're gender dysphoric, and they're just moving now into their fully transitioned phase, I mean, you know how fragile they are. They're incredibly fragile. And these people are extremely biddable. They're very, very agreeable. They just hate confrontation. They hate any kind of argument, And if you've got this shrink saying, just give up, just be a boy, it's going to be a lot better, you're going to be a boy. The chances are they're going to go, yeah, okay. And then they're going to live a life of absolute misery. Misery. Because here's the thing. If you have sexual inversion, that is, and we're talking about males here, you are a boy, but you have female sexuality, then either you must have feminine gender or you will have gender dysphoria. And that is going to apply for the rest of your life. It's not something you can change. So in my view, and I live in a place where, I see this all the time, what we need to do is to be far more supportive and say, look, we know it's a struggle. It's real tough. But you can do it if you try. You can really make it. It's not going to be easy for you. You're always going to have the challenge. You're always going to have that kind of intermediary existence. But still, you can make it if you try. Because, you are actually good enough. And that's what we should be doing. And I'm really up to the back teeth of these bloody GCs and their quack supporters, like fucking Amitai and the rest of them, coming up with a complete and utter nonsense. I mean, the people you need to be listening to are people like Diane Ehrensaft, the people who actually understand what's going on and who are taking a proper supportive role. You need to actually support people. Now, I am not saying that people should be led by the nose. That's a totally different thing. Kindly remember that. I'm not saying that people should be coerced or they should be pushed or even that they should be led. I should be saying that the motivation must come from the young person, but that motivation must always be supported by those people around them and never questioned and criticised. Okay? That's what we need, and we need to see it. And we need some big changes, because I'm seeing some real ugly things happening across the internet, especially poisoned cesspits like Fourth Wave Now and Mumsnet. And they're awful. They're just awful, what they're doing. They're trying to take us back to the 1980s or worse. And we can't have that. We simply cannot allow that to happen. The people involved are far too vulnerable. Anyway, that's enough for me for today. I've done my 3. I'll get these up to you. Enjoy.